Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us for this new webinar on the best new B2B marketing tactics. My name is Karen Cahill, and I'm your host today. Scott Lawrence and Bella Robbins are also on the line to walk us through some of what we learned from 2020.
Hello.
Hey.
And I'd like to encourage everyone to submit questions and comments in the Q&A box rather than the chat box. That way, if we can't get to your question during the webinar, we can pull it from the Q&A report afterwards and get back to you. Also, we're going to provide an email at the end for any additional questions you might think of after we're done.
For those unfamiliar with RMI, it stands for Response Mind Digital. We're a digital marketing agency based in Atlanta, and we'll go into a little more detail later about who we are and what we do.
And prior to that, I wanted to cover off on the question we gotten previously, which is, hey, your name is Response Mind, but what does Response Mind actually mean? So the word response refers to the fact that we're a direct response digital marketing agency. And that is to say that we're not a branding agency. And we're all about really just getting people to respond to our marketing, because marketing should be about making sales.
Yes, marketing should always be about making sales. And the word mine in Response Mind refers to how we're always mining for responses. We're mining for riches. Unlike traditional marketing, digital marketing enables us to use testing to have very quick turnarounds and ensure the best ads and landing pages are performing in order to make those sales.
And that brings us back to why we're here. So let's have a quick look at today's agenda. Okay, Scott, I think it's fair to say that 2020 kicked a lot of people's asses, which I can say because it's not crude when a Kiwi says it. But as we've said in our 2020 webinars, necessity is really the mother of invention. And with that in mind, I think it's fair to point out that B2B really had to pivot in 2020. And one of those changes was to unite the best practices of our B2C division with our B2B division, which we had to completely drop any ideas of trade shows and conferences.
That's true. That's what we did. And from it, I think we have a pretty good story to tell here today. You know, how to use B2C marketing tactics to build better and faster B2B digital marketing campaigns. I hope.
Yeah, and because we're going to draw from some of those B2C tactics, we thought it would be a good idea to start by briefly reviewing the difference between B2C and B2B marketing. Then we'll talk about how to use those tactics in building better landing pages, which is one of the fundamentals on the B2C side of the business. And just before measurement, we'll have a brief commercial break, and we've asked Obi Gray to pop in and give us a 90-second commercial about what we do here at Response Mind. Obi's our Director of Business Development.
And then I'll talk briefly about what metrics we think are the most important to pay attention to, and those metrics ensure that we're making the most of our marketing budget.
And the last two segments are about paid search best practices. And we also borrowed from the B2C division for those. And then LinkedIn best practices, which is not from B2C. We use LinkedIn strictly for B2B engagements because it's honestly too expensive. It's much more expensive than B2C paid social, but it's very targeted for B2B. So we'll share what we think are best practices there too.
And we added the feedback form to the agenda just to reinforce that it's really important to us that we get your feedback. So with that being said, let's get started.
Wait, just one more thing. We have what we call fun trivia questions that are anonymous, and they're meant to be lots of fun as we test your knowledge. So when we drop a question onto the screen in a little bit, just be a good sport and take a guess.
Okay, so Scott, probably everyone sitting in on this webinar is already familiar with the differences between B2C and B2B tactics, but it's probably a good idea just to cover off on those differences so we're all on the same page, so to speak.
Right. Okay, so they're pretty different, but also I wanted to talk about some of the ways they're the same too here.
So to get things kicked off, how would you say that B2C marketing is most different from B2B marketing?
Well, you know, I've always described it this way. You know, with a lot of B2C marketing, marketers just seem to try to get people to click on a call to action button, you know, just to buy something. So people are looking at their computer or their phone, as many of us do in our leisure time. And they could be on Facebook and an ad pops up, or they could be actively looking for something on a search engine. And in either case, the B2C marketer is usually just trying to get people with disposable incomes to click on an ad and buy that cool looking $50 shirt or $30 hat or whatever, that cool looking watch.
Yeah, and the point is that B2C sales are typically more transactional and less expensive than your average B2B sale.
Right. Like I also said, it's hard to imagine anyone sitting around with their phone, with $50,000 burning a hole in his or her pocket. So B2B marketing generally involves higher priced items or services in longer terms. On the other hand, not all B2C marketing is for inexpensive products. I mean, a $500,000 home sale is also a B2C sale. So I think we'll show that there are more similarities between B2C and B2B tactics than many may believe, at least related to digital marketing.
Yeah, at any rate, I think that sort of outlines the biggest difference between B2B and B2C. But we're going to cover how over the last year we've learned to use more of our B2C gurus tactics in B2B marketing. And that starts with landing page testing, which is our first segment today. And for a first example, we thought we'd show examples from a division at ResponseMind that focuses on healthcare. So let's talk about what the A/B test is here.
Right. Well, you can see that this is this is one of those vertical ads that were much more popular a few years ago when the majority of people weren't searching and surfing on their phones. But it provides an excellent, I think, opportunity to demonstrate what can be learned from really good A/B testing. So these two ads are identical with the obvious exception of the color change in the call to action.
And again, we're looking at B2C tactics in order to compare and contrast how ResponseMind pivoted to use them as B2B marketing tactics in 2020. But the point of this comparison is that the red button won. Just by changing the color of the call to action, 7% more people set appointments than the blue CTA that ran at the same time.
Right. And even though this is a B2C ad, the lesson applies similarly to B2B ads, as we're going to see in just a minute when we review some B2B landing pages. But first, let's look at changing more than just the color of the CTA.
So on the last ad, there was only one change between the two ads, but that change was the call to action. And we've talked in other webinars how a best practice is to change only one element of an ad in order to truly measure the effect of that change. So how do we change this ad?
Well, everything's the same except the hero image. So the yoga lady ad performed pretty well for Back Pain Centers of America, but we always try to beat the champion with A/B testing.
And this is where we thought we'd insert our first fun trivia question. Again, these are anonymous and no one's actually supposed to know the answer, but which ad do you think got more clicks and conversions in setting appointments? Is it the yoga lady or the kayak guy? And we'll give you just a few seconds to answer and then we can announce what everyone thought.
Right, so I'll just give a few seconds, but we might run up and right until the top of the hour here. So I'm going to cut it off in about 5 seconds. Just I'm hoping everybody will give it a guess. All right, 3, 2. Well, we got 52% voting today. So, all right, that's not great. But at any rate, 64% said kayak guy and 36% said the yoga lady. So thank you to those of you who played.
Well, the kayak guy did not win. Almost 20% drop off in conversions of new appointments, and that's not a good thing.
Right. Well, testing doesn't always mean you're getting better results. Testing just really means you're learning something, hopefully, so that you'll find better results down the line. And testing doesn't really actually require a large media spend either. Just enough to test it. So you could spend 5% as much as the champion and still get enough of a response to know whether the champion is still winning.
Okay, so let's talk about how this lends itself to B2B tactics.
Okay, but first, it may be important to reiterate one last time that in B2C marketing, we're usually just trying to get people to click on an ad and buy something. But in B2B marketing, you're not likely to land a new customer with a single ad. So the best you could do really is to start a conversation with them. And you want them to know who you are and what you do, and you want them to know that you know what you're talking about. And you want to get their permission to talk to them further.
And you can do that by getting them to offer their information to you on a landing page.
Yeah, that's one of the ways to start a conversation. So now we can go over that particular landing page tactics that we use in B2B marketing.
Yeah, we haven't talked much about this yet, but B2B marketing has traditionally involved attending trade shows and conferences and building in-person relationships. And so that was a real challenge in 2020. And our B2B marketers partnered with B2C marketers at ResponseMind to find new ways to build those personal relationships online. So we just gave examples of what our B2C marketers do to make the most of their landing pages. And in this segment, we're going to take a look at what our B2B marketers have defined as best practices in B2B landing pages. So this is what we consider to be an example of a winning landing page.
Yeah, well, there are several elements in this landing page that we like. First, business-wise, understands that their best prospects want as well as what most they want, and they know what they most want and what most bothers them. That's what I'm trying to say. But of those factors, I think that both are equally important. Knowing what they want and knowing what bothers them. So know what your best prospects want and know what they dislike or fear.
And how is that obvious from this landing page?
Well, business-wise deals in information, and they are in the business of helping you to find your best prospects, but they don't make the mistake of talking about themselves like too many companies' landing pages do. You know, who we are and what we do. They focus entirely on the benefits you're looking for. You know, so they say less about themselves and more about how they're going to help you. Instead of saying, hey, we triple verify our contacts or we manage hundreds of thousands of records. They speak specifically to what they know their prospects care about, finding hidden local prospects. But also they know that their prospects worry about a convoluted process with mass data and junk lists that aren't easy to verify and validate. And that's what this bullet point is all about. They're speaking not only about what they do, but also hit on what their prospects really don't like, a convoluted process.
It seems like there are a lot of words on this landing page compared to what we might use in one of the more concise landing pages popular today and that we often use.
Well, one of the tactics we think they use pretty well is to bold the actionable or important parts of each bullet point. It sort of makes the reader hone in on exactly the most important points.
And what about all of the form fields? As I recall, the more fields that are required to be filled out, the less likely someone is to actually fill it out. And then the company won't be able to start that conversation. In fact, I think for this webinar, we only asked for people's names, email address, company's name, and maybe a phone number.
Right. Well, so we made the phone number optional because people like me don't like to give out their phone number, which means I'm either going to not register, I'm going to give a fake number or one that's not personal to me. So the phone field can be meaningless or even a hindrance, but we included it because we have several people who have attended multiple webinars who probably realize we're not going to call them unless they indicate they want to talk. But the form on the landing page serves two purposes really. And the first is, to your point, historically, the more fields you have to fill out, the fewer people will fill it out. However, that's becoming less and less true as autofills have really become pretty commonplace. But also the second purpose of the form field is to weed out the people who really aren't serious.
Okay, well, I believe there are a few points about every landing page that you wanted to highlight here. So let's go over that.
So there are actually 7 points I wanted to highlight. The first is that landing pages, at least those coming from an ad, should always be separate from the homepage. In fact, they should be clear of all navigation and distractions. You know, you're taking them to a page to start a conversation with you, so don't muddy it up by having other voices weighing in on the page or, you know, offering an escape to navigate away.
Yeah, and of course we say that B2B landing pages sell, but it's a bit different than trying to get someone to buy a hat online as our B2C group does. I mean, B2B landing pages are attempting to start a conversation, and the items underlined in red are selling by solving a problem. But what about tailoring the message?
Well, so points 5 and 6 really sort of go together, but we separated them out to drive the point home that it's really important to cater your message to specifically the audience that you're targeting. For instance, at ResponseMind Digital, we focus on healthcare clients and health and wellness, and those types of groups. So there may be some overlap there, but hospitals think of their customers as patients, while organic produce clients have customers. And it's just important to speak their language.
And this landing page may not be an example of getting something for free, but we're going to see some examples of that in just a moment. Anyway, free items are a little bit like an enticement, for instance, to download a free white paper where the price is just your email address.
Right. I've got an enticement slide coming up next, but that free item is generally going to be, on one of three topics. People care most about what their customers are saying, what their competitors are doing, and what the business landscape they're operating in is likely to do.
And the final point is one you've already demonstrated with the B2C landing pages: always A/B test to try and beat the winner. So these are the must-do components of selling a B2B landing page, but there are some other tips and tricks that we wanted to share.
Right. So most B2B marketers are familiar with offering an enticement or a payoff or providing an email address, but there are a couple of best practices that we thought we'd highlight here too.
So as an example of an enticement, healthcare consumerism was a hot topic in 2018, and the medical industry started to realize that their patients were checking Yelp scores before booking appointments. So the 9 drivers of health consumerism was a really hot topic.
Right. And as we said, one of our target markets is the healthcare industry. So we offered this white paper and infographic as a download for the price of an email address. And again, this was so that we could start a conversation. This was actually our most downloaded lead magnet in 2018. And of course, a patient survey is just a survey of a hospital's customers. And we realized that research about their customers was something that healthcare systems were also likely to find valuable.
Of course, those landing pages should have forms on them like this one. And now we get to see what you meant about lead magnets generally covering one or more of 3 topics. Those topics are about their customers, their competitors, or the landscape that those businesses are operating in.
Right. Every year, Becker's List publishes what it thinks of 100 great hospitals. So we just took that list and did an analysis of what they were each saying on their websites. And it turned out that all 100 hospitals were saying the same six things. That was pretty fascinating to us.
But the point is that offering the download enabled ResponseMind Digital to make themselves known to the marketing professionals at hospitals, which is one of our targets.
Right. Right. But I also wanted to point out something that isn't necessarily obvious on this slide. So each of the CTAs is different. And more to the point, they change frequently. One of the most successful changes a few years ago on the B2C side of our business was when someone changed the CTA from submit now, which is pretty standard, to see if I qualify. And just that one change made a huge difference. So changing color, changing wording, even the shape of the CTA is up for grabs. You should always experiment and test for the best performing ads and landing pages and forms.
And everything has to be measured. But I'm getting ahead of the agenda here. Before we get into measurement, I think we have some examples of the reworked B2B landing pages that will drive all of this home.
Indeed, we do. And I think this example has more to do with remembering the basics. And that is, namely, a landing page should be clean and easy to read. A B2B landing page necessarily has a form on it in order to acquire your prospects' information. So don't make them search for it like this Dell landing page did.
I guess even big companies get it wrong.
Yeah, but it's more than just not showing the form above the fold. I mean, what does clinical efficiency even mean? So someone reworked the page with a larger hero image, removing that flood of copy that made you want to just immediately hit the back button. And they placed the form above the fold, and it's much clearer, cleaner copy now.
And this is where we thought it'd be fun to have our next anonymous trivia question. So it's probably obvious which of these landing pages performed better. But let's see how close everyone comes to the actual percentage increase in conversions. And just as a hint, it was the one on the right. Is it 30% better, 100% better, 150% better, 200% better, or more than that? So go ahead and lock your vote in.
Yep, we're going to give you another 5 seconds. It's pretty close. We've got answers all over the board. Just give you another 3 seconds. Please go ahead and, it's supposed to be fun. So you could just answer.
Friday afternoon fun.
Yeah. All right, I'm gonna go ahead and call it. Yeah, we got last second votes in. All right, 23% said 30% better. 15% of those voting said it was 100% better. 31% said it was 150% better. 23% said it was 200% better, and only 8% said it was more than 200% better. Thanks for playing.
As you can see, the results were extremely impressive. I would imagine like a 320% increase in conversions for Dell could mean tens of thousands of dollars.
Yeah, well, you know, when you have a 320% increase, it really doesn't matter even how much the new landing page costs to create. But anyway, this one wasn't expensive to create. And it's not even all about reworking everything on the page. You see the difference between these two pages? It's often just a really minute change. We did a trust badge test on this landing page, which is an example of adding an award or some accolade an organization has received. And it can be an official award or as simple as a testimonial. And this one's a little dated, so it's a little blurry.
And that was the only thing that was changed on this page, right? And both pages were run at the same time in parallel. So the 29% increase in conversions is definitely specifically due to the trust badge.
That's right. It's exactly how A/B tests are supposed to be run, ideally. You know, change one item and run it in parallel, bringing in traffic from the same sources.
And then measure it.
Yep. And measurement is the next segment of the webinar. And then paid search, and then LinkedIn best practices are just after that. But this is the point where we asked Obi Gray, our Director of Business Development, to add a 90-second commercial to tell everybody who we are and what we do.
Yes, thank you, Scott, and all of you for hanging out with us on this beautiful Friday afternoon. I say it often, but I truly enjoy these webinars because it gives us an opportunity to connect with great marketers like yourselves and share best practices for testing, measuring, and optimizing various marketing tactics. And yes, it gives my team an opportunity to start great dialogue with businesses who are looking to sell more of their stuff. And so if you're looking to drive more sales, which I know all of you are, there are ways we can help. First is our paid search assessment. And listen, folks, we're halfway through 2021. Every client we work with was doing paid search before they started working with us. And now they are doing it more efficiently than ever. This assessment will help you uncover some things that will surely lead to a more efficient use of your budget and help you drive more high quality leads. And finally, our social media assessment and the feedback we'll give you on how to research and better target your audience will lead to improved campaign ROI. We know this because we've run so many of these campaigns, and we've figured out over time, you know, across hundreds of campaigns, what works and what doesn't work. So again, this is an important note. You don't have to rely, for instance, on Facebook's logic to tell you who your best customers are. We can help you do this research. And with Facebook not being able to use third-party cookies and IDFAs to gather information on users, this assessment couldn't be more timely. So to take advantage of these offers, you can simply check the box on your screen right now, and I will personally follow up with you later today. Also, you should have an email from me in your inbox right now, which will allow you to schedule me at your convenience so we can get you on your way to higher returns on your ad spend. All right, Scott, that's it for me, man.
Okay, great. Hey, Joey.
Okay,
We're just going to leave that up. I'm sorry. I was just going to say, we're just going to leave that the poll up, and we just need to move on though, because we got a lot to get through today.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay.
So the marketers listening in probably realize that we are a little out of order. In a marketing campaign, you might start with your paid advertising, which leads to a landing page, which leads to measurement. But in this webinar, we started with the landing page testing, and now we're talking about measurement, and we're going to end with paid advertising tips.
Yes, but I like to think that there's a method to our madness. Like Tarantino's Pulp Fiction, out of order can be kind of fun.
Well, if anyone can, Bella can make B2B metrics fun. So with that being said, Bella, floor is yours.
There are some typical metrics that we measure to get a sense of what landing pages are working and whether some new idea like changing a CTA to see if I qualify works, like Scott said a few moments ago.
Yeah, so it doesn't matter what the landing page is. You're obviously going to start with the best landing page you know how to make and then test from there.
Exactly. So this was a landing page similar to the yoga lady example earlier, and we weren't unhappy with the results at $51 per lead because each appointment was worth an average of about $318.
But of course, you tested the original landing page with other ideas such as the trust badge.
Such as a trust badge. And you normally don't have to spend much to test something, as Scott said. You can keep about 95% of your media spend in the original landing page while you test at a fraction of the cost, which is what we did here.
But once you learned that your cost per lead was going down, you could pour more money into it.
Yeah, but we also tested a free guide, and you can see that conversion rates went up while cost per lead decreased.
Yeah, those are two really important metrics.
Then we had the idea to combine the two because, well, why not? Now we were seeing more visits than previously, but the conversion rate wasn't obviously tremendously better.
And why do you think that was? I mean, the trust badge and the guide both increased conversions independently. Would you not expect that the rate would increase even more with both elements on the page?
Well, yeah, I would have thought so, but that's why we continually test, because truly we don't know what will work best. At any rate, we're still moving in the right direction here.
And are these all of the primary metrics you look at? Like visits, leads, cost per lead?
These are primarily what we look at for landing page testing, but the metrics depend on, what you're trying to measure. And full disclosure, I borrowed this slide from our CEO who titled the slide "A Simple Plan" because he's a fan of irony.
Yeah, it doesn't look all that simple.
But I decided to include this slide because it works as a sort of guide to what really needs to happen first. And the absolute first thing you have to do is decide who your ideal prospects are. Because the more specialized you are to what your prospects are looking for, the more valuable you'll be to them. And at ResponseMind, we have 4 verticals that we serve: health and wellness, multi-channel retail, healthcare, and B2B. And we make sure to highlight in our marketing that we're good at every one of those verticals because we have a department focused on each of them.
And as an example, you think you have a couple of screen grabs from the ResponseMind digital website. Yes,
I do. But first, I thought I'd show you what our homepage looks like because it hits on what Scott mentioned sort of casually about landing pages, but it's important. And he showed other people's websites, but I thought it might be good to show that we actually practice what we preach. Again, you don't just want to tell people all about what your company does. It may seem like a minor difference, but it's not. You actually want to speak specifically to how their problems will melt away when they work with you. So you want to be aspirational, but you also want to consider what they most dislike. In our case, we help people market with confidence by measuring everything in order to maximize their profit.
Scott, are those your dogs, Scott?
Those are mine.
It's not my fault this time.
Those are definitely
not mine. Anyway, and the sore spot, the fear, if you will, is marketing with guesswork, which too many marketers who come to us tell us happens way too frequently.
Exactly. In fact, here's what you see when you scroll down from there. We go so far as to call it gambling with your marketing budget. And I thought this was fair game because this segment is about measurement. And that's really the only way to ensure you're getting the most out of your marketing budget.
Okay, but we initially flipped to this screen because you were talking about ensuring you have very clear audiences.
Right. Thank you for keeping me on track. We believe
the dogs, it's just
exactly. We believe in targeting to a precise audience. So if you click on the menu button, we're very clear that we help 4 types of clients, which are these 4 right here: the retail, B2B marketing, healthcare, and wellness and fitness. But let me get back to the chart.
So presumably being focused on particular types of customers helps in understanding their problems and understanding how to build solutions for them, which is the next part of the chart.
Right. Well, that's the idea. And I'm not going to talk about each of the columns here, but the 3rd column is kind of important.
Yeah, the website needs to be compelling.
Right. The website needs to sell what you have to offer. And the way that to do that is to speak about their issues, as we've just covered. And they can also see, what you're talking about because you have testimonials and trust badges on the site. Like this one here, showing that RMI was a top workplace in Atlanta for the 4th year in a row this year.
Couldn't help yourself, could you, Bella?
Well, I am in marketing. Anyway, HR asked me to include it in everything I do now because we are growing and hiring. And ResponseMind is a great place to work. We're always looking for bright new people.
Nice. Okay. Well, we need to move on to the Google search tips and tactics because we're running a little long. But first, why are webinars way over on the bottom right of the screen?
Well, like I said, I borrowed this slide from our CEO, and it was originally created without that segment. We added it because webinars are a really important component of B2B marketing today. And in fact, just one more click slide. According to Ziff Davis, even 11 months before the pandemic hit, webinars were the method that decision makers used most to absorb content. And we think that when we look back on this in another 12 months, we'll see that it's only grown since April of last year. So just some food for thought.
Okay, well, the next segment is about best practices for paid search and B2B campaigns. So let's dive into that now. So for the paid search tactics, we'll look at some examples of what we think are great ads, and we'll explain why they're great. And like the last segment on landing pages, we're going to show how some time-tested B2C marketing methods work well for B2B paid search. So let's take a look at some of those examples.
So Centerpoint IT is a firm here in Atlanta providing IT support to specific types of organizations, which they point to in the top nav. And as I mentioned earlier, it's important to know exactly who your ideal targets are, but it's also important to make that known to them. So choosing the healthcare option takes you to this page.
But they also do several other things well. As you said earlier, the website needs to sell, and the way to do that is by making it about them, recognizing that they have a problem, you have a solution, and their world is going to be easier with you in it. I think a consensus of non-IT people would not say that IT is simple. So they highlight that in their primary message. It's their tagline at the top, making IT simple for you.
Exactly. And they also ask the question that healthcare IT professionals undoubtedly ask themselves all the time. Do I have everything I need to be effective? I mean, medical IT is a beast. You have to be HIPAA compliant. Medical records with the need for privacy will, without question, lead to redundancy and inflated costs. And the reality is that there are always new ways to be more effective. And it's an excellent question to put there. Again, the website hits on what they want and what they fear.
Right, so now let's look at some search results. When we typed in HIPAA compliant cloud storage, we didn't see Centerpoint IT there.
But we did see a couple of ads that looked pretty good to us. Again, playing on the simple IT theme. Connectria bills themselves as compliant cloud made easy. and Atlantic has a turnkey solution. They are both playing on the theme of IT made easy.
Databank, the second ad down, appears to have misspelled a word in the title of the ad. HIPAA is supposed to have an I in it, but you know, when you think about it, Centerpoint appears to have a focus on local businesses.
Right, so maybe they'd want to advertise locally only. Here are the results for the search term HIPAA compliant cloud storage Atlanta.
So same players as the national results, same misspelled ad from Databank, and none of them actually mention Atlanta in the ad. And it seems like it could be a miss.
Yeah, well, here's where we thought we'd share some insights into how to have a bigger impact at the local level based on some proven techniques from B2C paid search ads. So let's look at the 3 B2C rules for paid search to sell with local intent. All right, the first one. This is an example of a national retailer who sells online nationally, but also has brick and mortar stores. So for local, you have to treat the campaign separately. To drive local sales, city-related keywords should be used prominently. Now, some of the paid search veterans listening in know that city terms are going to have less volume, which is definitely one metric that we look at. But city-related keywords also usually have a much higher conversion rates because of how targeted they are. And they're often among the top performing keywords.
And speaking of top performing keywords, they should also combine all top performing regular keywords with the city or area names, right?
Right, like this ad does here. So use those keywords with locations, but also it's important to remember the basics of a good ad. Speak to what they're looking to do, like this example, complete your home, but also include a unique selling proposition and a strong call to action that tells them to act now or today, like this ad does.
And the city or area name should ideally go in the first or second headline, like this ad.
Right, and that's simply because your target audience has a tendency to notice their area. We all do. And that's a bigger finding that many national marketers realize. It's huge because you're going to get a better click rate, which will help your quality score, which will lower your cost per click. So I live in the greater Atlanta area, but I notice ads that mention Roswell and Sandy Springs and other cities that are close to me just north of Atlanta. I don't want to drive all the way into Atlanta if I don't have to, and definitely not through Atlanta. So ads that say biggest selection in Atlanta are a little less appealing to me.
Yeah, and I suspect it's also important to use language that the locals know. So Pinnacle Hills Promenade is a mall in Rogers, Arkansas, which is where I'm from, Bella. Just kidding. It's known by both Rogers Promenade and Pinnacle Hills Promenade. So both are used in this ad.
All right, number 3, the third point is one that's been sort of a contentious one because it usually means doing a lot more work for what some would say is unwarranted.
Maybe prudent to remind everyone at this point how Google search became so massively popular so quickly 20 some years ago. Users chose Google over other search engines because search engine users felt like they would more quickly find what they were looking for because of Google's superior search algorithms. And as we said, Google likes to give precisely what users want on their first try.
Right, and that's why Google created a quality score, because if an ad is getting clicked on for certain search phrases more frequently, then that ad's providing better search results to Google's search customers. So we believe that 1 keyword per ad group requires you to make your ad more relevant and precise. And the more relevant it is, the better the click-through rates you'll get. And that means you'll get a better quality score. And the better the quality score Google assigns to you, the lower you'll pay in cost per click. And that's precisely why it's worth doing.
Okay, that's good information for selling through paid search at the local level. But do you have any nuggets for selling using the Amazon model, where people aren't necessarily looking for something close to them, but they want the best they can find at a national level?
We actually have a full webinar on the difference between selling using the Amazon model versus selling using the Home Depot model, because about 60% of Home Depot's online sales are picked up at the local store. So they advertise locally too, which is why we've dubbed it the Home Depot model. But for the sake of time, we have 2 quick points on selling using what we call the Amazon model, which again are tips based on B2C digital marketing. So the first tip from our B2C group is to focus on 2 types of keywords, branded and non-branded. Depending on the size of your company, people may search for your company's brand and products. And so we like to break out our campaigns by brand keywords and non-brand keywords.
Yeah, we've had questions on this from people who don't understand why you'd want to pay money to buy your own brand name keywords. Using a B2C example, brands like Clorox or Bounty paper towels should rely on organic traffic. The point is that if you type in Clorox to a search engine like Clorox.com, it's going to be the first organic listing. So why buy the paid listing, which gets fewer clicks anyway?
Well, it's true that organic gets more clicks, but the reality is, sorry, the dogs are going off again. But the reality here is that if you don't bid on your brand, your competitors might, and they'll pick up that paid search traffic. So in order to make sure that your competitors don't steal into that space, it's necessary that you bid on your own brand name.
Okay, well, we're going to look at some B2C examples. So we ran a quick search for Bounty paper towels. Their shopping section is completely B2C, so we're not going to look at it. And these right here are paid search ads, which we are going to talk about. And this is a first organic listing, which isn't paid for, which we're not going to talk about.
Right, so you can see the term Bounty paper towels in the search bar above, and the first 2 paid search ads returned are channels where you can buy those items. But look who won the 3rd page search spot.
Now, Brawny is a competitive brand that bid on the keyword Bounty paper towels.
Right, and that's why you bid on your own branded terms.
Okay, point number 2, make sure that your ad copy and messaging is very relevant and specific to the user. So here's a search result for the phrase Clorox wipes.
So the title of the ad is the branded product term, with the addition of an attention-grabbing fact, such as kills 99% of bacteria. And this is what people care about, especially more than ever now when buying disinfecting wipes. So it's a really good attention grabber.
And look at the extensions, surprising uses and ratings and reviews. I mean, these are great as long as they go to a landing page that also enables me to buy. I would definitely click on the surprising uses extension. That's interesting. And ratings and reviews is always a good idea to include. People love to crowdsource their options for products, so having a rating accomplishes that for them. And here is our final segment of today's webinar. And in keeping with Bella's survey that showed webinars are the #1 way that decision makers are gathering information, you created a faux LinkedIn ad campaign for a faux webinar.
Yes, right. We wanted to show how interactive the tool is. So I sat down and recorded myself, despite not really enjoying hearing myself on recordings. I really don't know, or I really don't think there's a better B2B targeting mechanism than LinkedIn, even though it's expensive. And that's difficult to say out loud because it is so expensive. And by the way, Facebook also has a B2B feature, but we've tested it numerous times, and Facebook may say they have B2B targeting, but Facebook simply doesn't have the same result in the final analysis. And that's because in LinkedIn, people willingly offer up their name, the company where they work, their title, the number of years and their specialty, the schools where they attended. It's very rich first-party data, which Facebook just doesn't have. And don't get me wrong, we buy media on Facebook for our B2C clients, but just not so much for our B2B clients.
So regarding the expense of LinkedIn, you also have a tip for bringing that cost per click way down, right?
Right, that's true. Yeah, in the budget optimization portion towards the end of this recording we're about to roll.
Okay, let's roll it.
Okay, 1 second. Got to share my sound, sorry. There we go. Okay, here we are in LinkedIn's Campaign Manager, and we're going to go through and create a campaign for a new webinar. And for those familiar with Facebook advertising, but not yet familiar with LinkedIn, LinkedIn at first may seem a little less intuitive and less robust than Facebook, but it definitely has richer B2B data for segmenting and targeting B2B prospects. So when we click Create Campaign here, we're directed to this page to set up. And you can create a new campaign group. For instance, if you want to drive people to download a white paper on your website. But like I said, we're going to start with a faux webinar. So we'll stay in this campaign group right here. We'll hit Next. And if you are familiar with Facebook, then you know this probably looks familiar to you. Awareness, consideration, conversions, word for word, what Facebook uses. But we would say that brand awareness, as you hover over, you can see that you get descriptions for each. Brand awareness is really more of a vanity metric today, and it's really not what anyone should expect from really good digital marketing today. As you go through, you can see, lead generation, website conversions. This is pretty much where we live as direct response marketers. We think that your website really should convert, whether you're selling something right there on the website, or if you're just trying to get a conversion of someone filling out a form. So you can start that conversation like we talked about previously. Now, with that said, people who have registered for this webinar today know that they probably realized that they were taken to a Zoom registration page. And that Zoom registration page is one that we use. So this is okay for website visits because Zoom actually provides a traceable webinar link for each method of invitation that you have, whether you're doing an advertisement or sending an email, which means you don't have to have a pixel set up on your website to trace conversions from LinkedIn. And by the way, the only reason we send people to the Zoom registration page is because we've tested it and retested it against a landing page or several landing pages on our website. And the Zoom registration page will win 9 out of 10 times. So now we just send people interested in registering to the Zoom registration page. And with the goal of sending them to the Zoom page, we'll go to website visits here and choose that. Now we're looking at our audiences. So again, over here you can see the objective selection, and now we're on the audience. It automatically selects United States for us, so we're good with that. You can exclude, different states. Let's say you don't want Las Vegas or some other place. You can certainly do that. But what's important here are the audiences. So like Facebook, you can upload a list, and from those lists you can build lookalike audiences. So they'll go out and find people who look like the list that you like. Retargeting, third party, all of that stuff is really great. But where we find that we get the most value is because people have given their information to LinkedIn, you can go here to company. And as I said, we have several verticals that we go after. One of them is healthcare. So if we go to healthcare, and we can scroll through it and find healthcare, we can just type it into the search bar. And we would probably say, all right, well, hospital and healthcare, medical device, sure, maybe medical practice, if we could limit the size of the company, and you can in LinkedIn, mental health care, and so forth. And then you can go back to company here and say, all right, well, we want people who are marketers, because again, we're selling to healthcare marketers. And so we would look up marketing, and there it is. And so now we've got that locked in as well. And I'll just point out that you can see we've got 16 million people who fit that category. So we probably want to go in there and narrow the audience a little bit. For instance, you could look for people with job experience that's a little more senior. So job seniorities, you could go to functions, skills or experience, or job titles for that matter, typically. Or you can go in and narrow it by education, more about demographics and so forth. And for the sake of time, we're just going to move along here and go to the ad format section. So you choose we're going to put a single image ad. We've done carousel ads, which worked really well for a while when they first came out. Video ads, not as much. Text ads, we couldn't use them at all. But we would choose a single image ad and then come down and talk about, all right, well,
what is your budget going to be? So you can set a daily budget, or you can set a lifetime budget. Both of those are good. We like to set daily budgets because we keep track of it. Let's say we're going to set $100 as our daily budget. We want to start it today, which happens to be the 15th that I'm recording this. We can also set an end date. We actually recommend that because you can actually forget that it's running. So it's a good idea just to go ahead and they'll put you all the way out a month out, we would say, or let's end it one day, since the webinar is on the 16th. And then a target cost versus maximum delivery. We like target cost. And by the way, they give you a target cost and they say, all right, well, we recommend a target cost of $16.52. And similar advertisers spending between this and this. We don't think so. In fact, we suggest you try to spend as little as possible because I don't think it makes a difference. In fact, we've tested it. And what we found is you can spend the minimum amount that they tell you to spend so long as you're running more campaigns. So if you set it up to run a single ad, you can do that. And for $5, you might not be shown enough. But if you set up 5 of them to run, you're going to be shown 5 times as much, and you're going to pay the minimum amount that they require for you to pay. And again, this conversion tracking is a really good tool. It requires having the pixels on your website, which we're not going to do since we're sending them to the Zoom page. But if you go to next now, they'll want you to save your audience in place. And then you can start to place your ad. And so what comes up next is, you can create a new ad or browse existing content. We actually have some content on there already for other ads. Actually, let me go back and create a new ad and show you how that works. Test ad. When you write your introductory text, this is what actually shows up below, and this is the URL that you're going to want to send people to. So we can go to our Medical Marketers Masterclass. This is an example of what Zoom does, and we could say, all right, the LinkedIn ad number 1, just click that, it automatically copies it. And you go back and you put that in. And you can ask them to scrape it. They'll pull the image right from that page if you like, but that's really not the best idea because it's a Zoom page. So we could go here to the desktop where I have saved one of these ads. Here's one. And this is actually Medical Marketer Masterclass that we created. You can see me in Virginia there. And then you write a description, and that's going to show up at the top. And the last thing that I wanted to show you is that you go down here to the call to action. These are really important, we think, as we've mentioned previously. You don't have a lot to choose from with LinkedIn. Apply, download, view quote, and so forth. What we found, at least for webinars, is that register is really the only one to use. And you go over here and create the ad. I'm not going to create the ad because then I'd be paying money, but that is how it works. Okay, here we are.
Okay, sorry about that, everybody. It looks like I paused it and started again. I just want to say something really quickly, and that is Google Chrome has mentioned that they are doing away with third-party cookies in 2022. And that means that, and I didn't mention it in the recording, but I wanted to mention it here. They're doing away with third-party cookies, which means that retargeting is going to be really difficult for them. And their lookalike audiences are probably going to not be quite as good either. However, again, they have a lot of first-party data, which is okay. That first-party data is going to be from first-party cookies, and it's going to be from the data that people willingly give them. And so they're still going to have really rich data on folks. The retargeting might be more difficult. Some third-party issues might occur, but they're still going to have really good first-party data. That's what I wanted to add there.
Thanks, Scott. That was really thorough, and thanks for taking us through that. And if anyone has any questions about anything that we've gone over today, we'll include Obi's email and phone number in just a second. And in the meantime, we'd really appreciate it if you'd all fill out the feedback form for us. We'd like to know what was useful and what wasn't so useful today. And that should be on your screen right now.
Right. And And we're going to leave the feedback form up again for a minute or two so everyone can finish it, and we really appreciate it. But I thought I'd also put this keyword gap analysis on the screen while everyone's filling out the feedback form. So you can get a sense here for what Obi and his team are doing and looking at with your digital footprint. So they can compare what keywords you're ranking for and what your competitors are ranking for, both organic and paid. You know, in some cases, this page right here all by itself was really sort of invaluable for people because it made them question whether they should shift to or include different keywords and targets. And this is actually the last slide too. This site health measurement is not for an e-commerce site. So those 500 pages represent a fairly large organization, but 226 errors is really kind of a big deal, you know, to borrow Ron Burgundy's line. Anyway, we can look under the hood for you and tell you about any errors. Also look for that low-hanging fruit for what might be the biggest impact at the least cost.
Okay, I think that's going to do it for us today. We wanted to make sure everybody had, well, we were done by the top of the hour. So I think that we've accomplished that. Thank you so much for joining us today, and we hope that we'll meet you guys again on a future webinar.
Yeah, we'll see you next time. Thanks for joining.